Well, good morning and welcome to today's webinar. This is Streaming Bulletin Creation with Lutheran Service Builder. This is an overview webinar that will go over all the core aspects of Lutheran Service Builder and look at it from the angle of making your bulletin creation process quick and efficient and some time-saving tricks. My name is Peter Frank. Oops, there we go. I want to make sure my screen is live. I'm the Senior Marketing Manager for Church Supplies here at Concordia Publishing House. I've been at the publishing house for about 10 years now. Actually, yeah, 10 years this past summer. So I've been involved with a number of different groups. Most recently, before being involved with all of Church Supplies, I was with Concordia Technology Solutions. So you may have seen me do webinars on Church 360 before. I've spent a lot of time with that product. I've also spent a lot of time with Shepherd staff. So when I moved into Lutheran Service Builder about a year ago, or had that added to my my collection of products that I work with, it was a natural fit. So I am fairly new to Lutheran Service Builder in that I did just start learning it last summer, but I've spent a lot of time with our development team working on updates to the product, working on the new version, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So I've got a pretty good understanding of how Builder works and in conjunction with Lutheran worship. So if you need to reach out to me, my contact information is on the screen. Email is the best way to get a hold of me. But my phone number is there as well. It goes directly to this office here. A few housekeeping items before we begin. First off, this will be about a 50-minute presentation. I'm notorious for running a little bit over that, although I will let you go at 1 hour, hopefully on the dot. I do always plan about 10 minutes for question and answers at the end, although we don't always have enough to fill 10 minutes. So if you have questions, please ask them throughout. They'll show right up here on my screen so I can kind of see the queue of questions that we have. I'll probably not answer questions as we go, but if I see something that's easy to answer within the context of the outline, then I'll go ahead and do that then. We will be recording this webinar, or we are recording this. If you're watching this after the fact, thank you for viewing it. I'm sorry you couldn't attend live, but for those of you who are here live, thank you for being here and being able to interact and ask questions as we go. If you're not familiar with Concordia Publishing House, which I'm assuming most of you are, but just in case, we are the publishing arm of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. For almost 150 years, we've been serving the church, whether it's at the congregation level, at the family level, or the individual level. We provide products that share the gospel and assist in sharing the gospel, and that's what Lutheran Service Builder is. It helps you share the gospel through the context of worship. So Lutheran Service Builder is a PC-based software that allows churches to quickly and easily plan services, create custom service folders, export presentations, and conform with copyright requirements. And we'll talk about all of that in more or less detail as we go through it today. Lutheran Service Builder has a really interesting history. It was actually started as an idea during a seminary class assignment. It was developed in 2004 to about 2006 by Bob Lael, who at the time was a seminarian. Now he is ordained, and he is still working on Lutheran Service Builder among many other products here at Concordia Publishing House. You can see the whole story, or almost all the story. We've got one more video coming out in a couple weeks about Lutheran Service Builder, but it's really fascinating to just see how it went from beginning to end. So we released Lutheran Service Builder shortly after the Lutheran Service book was released in 2006, and Service Builder is used by about half of the LCMS, which we're hoping to grow that number as we move online, and that is what we're working on right now. So in early 2018, we'll be launching the online version of Lutheran Service Builder. It looks fantastic. I'm very pleased to be able to see it and preview it ahead of time, and I'm very excited to be able to offer this to our congregations because I think it's going to be a great improvement. So stay tuned. That'll be coming soon. I'm making a few assumptions about you who are here. I've told you a little bit about myself. Now here's what I think you are. I think that you are probably new to Lutheran Service Builder, and that you probably have not had much training, informal training at best. Now, starting this year, we really began to offer a lot of new training opportunities, live webinars. We've got a more detailed help system. So you may have had a little bit more training than just informal, but hopefully this will still be helpful to you. I know that you're probably eager to get more out of Builder. We've got, yes, 17 people here attending live right now and more joining every minute. So obviously you're spending part of your day, so I'm sure you're eager to learn more. And lastly, I'm assuming you're very busy because I've yet to meet a church worker who is not busy. So if you find that you know a lot of this information and your time is better spent doing something else, I completely understand. But my goal is to provide some helpful tips on how to make the bulletin creation process quicker, more efficient, and it should be worth your time. Just landed on the keyboard. Sorry about that. So now is your chance to tell me a little bit about yourself and see if my assumptions are correct. I'm going to share a few polls with you. The first one is to learn a little bit more about your position at the church, your primary role. Everybody seems to wear a lot of hats in the congregation, and so this just helps me contextualize it a little bit more. Looks like we've got about 50% of the people who have voted. It's a pretty big split. Several pastors who are here, several administrators. Looks like we've got just about everybody. So the bulk of the audience are pastors or administrators, but I know there are some others in each of the other three sections too. So thank you very much for being here, and thank you for answering that question. Let's go ahead and go to the next one. We're going to, I'm going to ask if you are currently using Lutheran Service Builder. Because we make this one available to all congregations, whether you're a customer or not, and so it'll help me to understand if you are using it. Looks like we've got almost about a 50-50 split, so that's really good. Well, good. So I'm sure I'll have some questions that are very specific about Lutheran Service Builder and the details within it, and some that are general. So yeah, it looks like a little bit over 50% are currently using Lutheran Service Builder. All right, now here's the fun one. Tell me what, for those of you who are using it, what is your skill level? Do you see yourself as an expert, or are you on the newbie side of things, or somewhere in between? All right, looks like everybody so far is intermediate or novice. That's great. We've got one person who's probably advanced. I'm glad to have you here. All right, we've got, yeah, just about everybody is between intermediate and novice. We got a few newbies who are now voting, so that's good. All right, well, that goes along with my assumptions that you're fairly new. The intermediates, there will definitely be a lot of things in here that you've seen before, but my goal is to provide some helpful tricks and tips that you haven't seen. All right, the last one is more for long-term use for us at the publishing house. Is what lectionary does your church use? And this is, again, the last question. We have had many requests for more one-year lectionary products, and we're trying to find all the one-year churches because I know that it's not the majority in our church body. And as we're seeing here, we don't have a single person yet who said 1 year. Almost everybody is 3 year, and that usually is what proves to be true. We've estimated that between 85 and 90% of our churches, if not higher, are using the 3 year. And this 87% right now, we've got a couple who are other or don't know. So that proves to go along with our trend. So thank you very much for telling me about yourself. That information is always extremely helpful for me as I present and for us moving forward. So goals for today. Oops. Jumping ahead. Learn the core features of Lutheran Service Builder. With more than half of the attendees already knowing Lutheran Service Builder, that'll be good, so you'll have a core basis. But then we're also going to look at how to plan a service with custom elements and how to do that quickly and efficiently. The goal of Lutheran Service Builder is not to just give you the liturgy out of the hymnal time and time again. We know that congregations often will change things, appropriately change things for their context. So we're going to show how to do that. And then at the end, my goal is that you'll be able to export a simple service folder that can be printed and used for Sunday. And we'll be looking at it for this upcoming Sunday. So the outline will start by actually planning the Sunday service. Then we'll set the standard worship elements. We'll add custom worship elements. We'll prepare the service for print, and if we have time, we'll look at for presentation as well. And at the very end, we'll spend a couple minutes discussing copyright management because that's very important. So let's go ahead and get started. Oops, jumping too far ahead. All right. this is the main screen of Lutheran Service Builder. If you have used this before, you're very familiar with it. I was going to show how to set your lectionary, but since everybody has the 3-year and it defaults to the 3-year, I'm not going to worry about that right now. If you do want to change to the 1-year, it's very easy. It's just in the settings. But we're going to jump ahead and go to the calendar view. This is the best place to start for any service, and what this will do will be to show you the church year calendar. Now you'll notice that there's the colors. That's the liturgical colors appropriate for the season. You have your Sundays after Pentecost, so this coming Sunday, October 8th, will be the 18th Sunday after Pentecost. That's what we'll be looking at, but before that I do want to draw your attention to a few of the special services here. Commemorations, feasts, and festivals will show up here as well. Now, if you are observing one of these special occasions in the church year, so like let's say we'll click on the 20th. When you go to create a service, it will default to what is on that day, but you do have the option to change it to any one of those special occasions within the octave, or as they call it, the 8 days before or after. So Sunday to Sunday is the 8 days. Now, as we look at this week, the 18th, when we click on that to go and create a service, you'll notice that that's the only option, is the 18th Sunday after Pentecost or none if you're not observing that occasion, although I think in most cases you'll choose that. You do have some other special occasions, weddings, funerals, day of national or local tragedy. Unfortunately, that is something that is applicable with what just happened in Las Vegas. But there's a few others on there as well. We're going to stick with the 18th Sunday after Pentecost. And the next step is to jump in to plan the service. Now, before we go there, I do want to call your attention to the notes section. If you want to include additional details about the service, you can put it there. Maybe you have a guest preacher or there's a baptism and you want to make sure to call that out in the notes. You can do that there. But we're going to go ahead and plan this service and take you next to choose an order of service. Now, we'll look at custom orders later on, but I want to draw your attention up here to the top. The orders of service that are available are all the services that are in the Lutheran Service book. And so you'll see the Divine Services right at the top. We're going to use Divine Service Setting 1, although you do have all 5 settings there. If you'd like to learn more about those settings, we have some detailed training webinars that get into that into more detail. There's also the daily offices, some other services like the service of prayer and preaching, one of the new services that have been put into Lutheran Service Book. This is meant for those Sundays when you are not celebrating the Lord's Supper, or maybe it's like a chapel at a school. But we're going to stick with Divine Service Setting 1 for right now, and click OK. So now we are in the service plan mode, and you'll see on the left-hand side in this first column you have the outline of the service, and it's divided into the 3 sections: confession, absolution, service of the word, service of the sacrament. Now you can expand and contract those by clicking the boxes next to that, and anywhere you see that plus minus box you can do that. That's very familiar, I'm sure, to Windows users from a folder structure standpoint, but it helps clean up if once you've completed a section. If you want to hide that, that makes it really easy for you. Now, again, the theme for today is streamlining the process. So using one of these pre-defined settings is one of the quickest and easiest ways to get started, because you see you have everything already laid out. The next thing that makes this very quick is when you're going to these different elements, you have suggestions. So here, the hymn of invocation. On that second column here, and there will be obviously another one over here on the right very shortly, you'll have a list of suggested hymns. Now, these hymns are suggested for a variety of reasons. The first one that shows up is the hymn of the day. That is considered proper, meaning it's appropriate for this Sunday in the church year. And there's a specific place for the hymn of the day right before the sermon. So we're not going to use that for the hymn of invocation. But you'll see that below that there's hymns for the readings. And when you click on these, you'll see the text of that hymn shows up. Now, there's also the ability to preview the music, and I'll turn my volume on. I don't think it will feed through. I always have trouble getting my audio to feed through here. Yeah, it doesn't look like that's going to work. It'll give you a very quick a MIDI file of the music that'll help you hear exactly what it sounds like. If you are not a church musician and you can't look at this and know exactly how the Church's One Foundation goes, that'll help you out. If you are a musician and seeing the melody will help you, you have that option as well. And you just click on that next tab to see melody. But I really want to draw your attention here to the Info tab. The Info tab provides all sorts of great information about each hymn in there. And as you scroll down, you can see there's the author and composer information, copyright information, tune, all of these things that me as a non-musician don't really understand. But then there's topics, and topics like the church militant, close of the service. These are topics that are assigned to these hymns within the context of Lutheran Service Book and are really easy to just get a quick glimpse of it. So like here, Church's One Foundation says one of the topics is good for close of service. So we'll probably use that at the close. We need something that's better for the beginning of the service. Now, you'll see below that related scripture, and each verse has various related scriptures. This one is just so rich, with each verse having several in here. And down below you also have where they're suggested on which days of the church year, and this one has a lot as well. And so that all of that stuff feeds into what is suggested. You don't have to go searching for all of these because it'll show you hymns for the reading. So what we're going to actually select for our hymn of invocation is Christ as our cornerstone. And that's because not only is the topic appropriate, beginning of the service, but also the verse, one of the readings for today, Matthew 21:42, is one of the references in stanza 1. Now, I want to show you a fun little tool that we've got available. If you go to lutherancalendar.org, you can see that we have the church year in place there. We'll go to Pentecost 18. It's a very similar view to what we were on before. But what lutherancalendar.org provides is a very quick way to get access to these propers. And so here's Pentecost 18, 18th Sunday after Pentecost. You can read through the readings for today. Or for next Sunday. And you can see here one of the readings, the gospel reading, is Matthew 21:33 through 46. And so if you're planning your service, this is probably the quickest way to just see what the propers are. Now within Lutheran Service Builder, you can see that by going here and we'll scroll down to the gospel. You can see the gospel assigned for today. Oops, it's going a little slow. There you go. Default Holy Gospel is that Matthew 21:33 to 46, and you can read that here. That's a few extra clicks. One of the reasons why we created lutherancalendar.org is so that it's always available, readily available on your mobile device. It shows all the propers right in a row, and so that makes it a little bit easier for you. So just wanted to highlight that, highlight why we are using Christ is our cornerstone for the hymn of invocation. So to select it, I'll go back to the hymn of invocation, and I can double click it and it'll select it in there. I can also drag and drop it and place it in there. So now I have assigned that hymn for that part of worship. And that's going to be the way you go about this to quickly build your service. Is you'll go through and you'll see the red words are for the rubrics. As you click on each one, there's a lot of defaults. And in some cases, there's no options. But like here, the exhortation, there's the default for divine service setting 1. Absolution or declaration of grace, you have that option, but absolution is selected. And so that gets us through confession absolution. Now as we get into the service of the word, it'll also select the proper, it'll default to the introit for this Sunday in the church year. And the hymn of praise defaults, the psalm, the Old Testament reading defaults. You can choose other ones in here, but if you're doing it quickly and you're going by the lectionary, it's all set up for you based on this Sunday in the church year. So that takes us all the way down. As we're selecting those, we get down to the hymn of the day, which of course is also proper. We already talked about that. That's here and ready to go. So I'll show you how you drag and drop and place it in there. And now that has been selected. So we'll keep going down. Nicene Creed is selected. Maybe you want to choose the Apostles' Creed. It's just one click away to select that. If you want to go with the Athanasian Creed outside of Trinity Sunday, you can choose to do that. I wouldn't recommend it. That takes us now to prayer of the church. Now, prayer of the church is set aside at this point in the service, but there is nothing in place there for you to do. And that leads me to my next shortcut. The Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, their worship team there, provides prayers of the church for free, available for download. Now, you can go to lcms.org and get that in a Word document. You can subscribe for email updates as well. But what I want to draw your attention to is on Lutheran Service Builder's website, lutheranservicebuilder.com, if you go down to the bottom, there's a download section in the more links. And we make this kind of hidden because it's really only for current customers. If you click on downloads, it will take you to what we call Let Us Pray files. Let Us Pray is the name that the LCMS Worship Office gives. And on a monthly basis, they produce these prayers, and we go in and we convert them to LSB files. And we post them on the website. And if you want, you can subscribe and get email updates when they're available. So we can go here, October 8th, 18th Sunday after Pentecost. We're using the 3-year lectionary. All we have to do is click it, and it'll download. And downloads to a zip file. And when I open the zip file, move it over here, it hide all my links just to not draw attention to those, even though I just said it. There we have October 8th, 2017, Series A. Now all I have to do is double click on that file. I don't even have to export it. And now Builder, you can't see it in your view, but my little icon is flashing. When I go back to Builder now and click on Prayer of the Church, I can go to Write My Own, and that will now show up October 8th, 2017. When I click on that and preview that, you'll see on the far right you have all of the prayers of the church written out in the appropriate Builder format where you have pastor and congregation, and it's tied in with the propers with the today in the church here. And so you can just go ahead and plug that right in. Now, if you want to edit that, customize it, I know that many churches will put in specific petitions. You can do that through what we call My Worship Resources. Up here in the top right, or sorry, top left, Home Actions, the right icon there is My Worship Resources. And it'll show up in Common Elements. Just by opening that file, now we have it in Common Elements. And I can click on October 8th, and I can go in here and modify the text. And the Save button is up here in the kind of the center of the screen, that last collection of icons. So if you want to modify it, you can. And maybe it's just for space, and like here's brief silence. You could delete the spaces around that. Doesn't look as good, but I just wanted to edit something. But you can save that. So now back to the service plan. Here we go. We can go in here and select that, drag and drop it in place, and now prayers of the church have been selected. Now, I don't know about you, but to me that seems like it'll save probably 20-30 minutes of typing these out. I'm guessing that you'll probably have standard petitions that you use on a regular basis if you're not using Let Us Pray, but I highly recommend using that. There's something pretty great about the church at large praying the same prayers on a weekly basis. It just ties us together in that synodical way, that walking together way. So I encourage you to do that. That is an option there, and it's certainly a time saver. All right, we'll continue on down here. You'll see, again, everything that has a proper is already in place. There's a proper preface for the 18th Sunday after Pentecost. Then we'll get down to the words of our Lord, and I want to draw attention to this because I get a lot of questions. The words of our Lord, there's a left column and a right column, which are two very odd categorizations. If you look in Lutheran Service Book, they don't actually name those sections. There's just two different ways of the order in which these words are spoken. So the left column says the words of our Lord, proclamation of Christ, and then the Lord's Prayer, whereas the right column has the Lord's Prayer first, than the words of our Lord. And so you can choose those, toggle between those, whichever your preference is. Below that, then, is the rubrics related to the distribution after the Pax Domini, Agnus Dei. Then we have the distribution hymns. And we'll select a few more. Again, we've got our suggestions ready to go. The first one I'm going to pick is Fruitful Trees, Spirit Sowing. And the second one that I'm going to pick is 566. Where did that go? There we go. By Grace I'm Safe, the last suggested one here. And we'll put both of those in place. And then we've got the Post-Communion Canticle and the Post-Communion Collect, which again is appropriate for this day in the church year. There's not one for every day, but this one is the one that's selected. And lastly, the benediction. Now, I know that it's very common in most congregations to have a closing hymn. And so this is going to get us from these common elements to these custom elements. In fact, I've yet to go to a church that doesn't end with a closing hymn, although that is not part of the liturgy. And so we're going to start making these customizations now. And the first one we're going to do is this closing hymn. We already talked about using the church as one foundation. So at the bottom here, I'm going to right-click and go to Insert. And it's going to give me the list of elements that I can insert. Now, give you one more way of doing that. If you click on an element here, up in the top, there's an Insert, and it'll take you to the same thing. So you don't have to right-click. But the common elements, collect, heading, hymns, rubric, caption, we're going to select hymns. We're going to drag it and drop it, and it's probably going to be really hard for you to see. In the lower left corner, there's going to be a little arrow that shows where I'm dropping it. I'm going to place it right there, and I get a yellow triangle, the little warning that says I don't have a hymn selected. It also just says hymn. I'm going to double-click on that and change it to say closing hymn, and now, because I selected a hymn element, it gives me my hymn suggestions again. And so I'm going to do the church as one foundation. Again, we talked before about how that's a close of the service hymn, and that's appropriate. So I'm going to drag and drop that, put that in place, and now my service is planned. There's a few more common element or custom elements I'm going to add, but I want to get into the bulletin view first. So you see here, as I scroll through, and I went through that pretty quickly, what I'm looking for is any yellow triangles. The yellow triangles are the place where it says that something is missing, and it really only comes down to the hymns. Occasionally, if there's something tied into the season, you know, if you have something selected with Alleluia in it during Lent, you'll get a little triangle letting you know that that may not be appropriate for that time of the season. It's not going to prevent you from doing that because not all churches follow that. But it'll at least give you that little warning and provide those helpful tips there. But I've got my service planned. I can now go to this next icon, which is preparing a bulletin. And it shows me that I have all these titles. That's because as I was testing around with it, my format, I set titles only. I'm going to go back to default real quick to show what this looks like. All right, there we go. So you'll notice the screen change. I get this giant copyright sign there, and that tells me that there's some copyrighted hymns that are included in the service. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But I want to draw your attention here is that you have all of these elements of the worship written out in their full detail. And as you scroll down, there's the readings, there's gospel reading, there's the hymns. Oh, and I did stick with the Athanasian Creed. I should go back and change that. All right, so everything is all ready to be exported, and down at the bottom there's our copyright lines or different acknowledgments. Let me go back here to the plan view. I'll switch out Athanasian Creed because I did not actually intend to stick with that. We'll switch to the Nicene Creed. There we go. But there's a few things that I want to add here. For one of the things that is common at churches is to have some kind of opening sentence. We call it "as we gather." That's what's in Creative Worship, one of our other products, and I'm going to show that here as well. So we want to put the theme of the service at the very beginning is "as we gather." Now, this is kind of a custom text, so we're going to go to My Worship Resources, and we're going to go to Common Elements. We're already there, and click New. Now this new thing, it'll let me name it right from the beginning, so I'm going to put it "as we gather." And it'll put that caption in there too. That's what it's going to say in the bulletin. And I've got a Word document open on my other monitor here. I'm going to copy and paste this so you can see it, so that you're not waiting for me to type this all out. This gives the theme of the service. The vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel. Sings Isaiah in the Old Testament reading, and it goes on from there. It's a great way to kind of draw the members of the congregation, those attending, to the theme of the service and help them see how the service and the propers tie back to the readings. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. Now I have this as we gather, and it's got my details. When I go back into the planning view and I go here into insert, at the very bottom we have my custom elements. I've only got these two. We have the prayers of the church and as we gather. I'm going to drag as we gather up to the very top and put that in place there, and you can see it's formatted accordingly. Now, this may change depending on the week of the church. You're probably not going to have the same as we gather every time. In some cases, some churches may do that. You may have a welcome message that's the same every week, maybe a note from the pastor, and you could put that as a common element, or a custom element. Another thing that you could do is to just have like a placeholder custom element for as we gather, where you don't, oops, wrong one, where you don't actually put the full text in, because that's unique by week. And so you could just put insert text here, which means that when you go to export the bulletin, you just copy it and paste it into Word in the export. But for right now, we've included that here in at the beginning of the service. Let's do another one. A very common one would be to have a children's message. That's not part of the liturgy. That's not in Lutheran Service Book, but it's very common in most churches. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to create a new custom element we're going to call children's message. And I'm going to paste in some instructions here. So I'm just going to put all children, oops, I should actually have that be grammatically correct. All children ages 2 to 12 are welcome to come to the front of the church for a special message. This is a great way to kind of put some age limits on it. You don't want high schoolers coming down and sitting on the ground next to your 3-year-olds there. I'm going to italicize this too. This is a text editor, so I can put that in there. You may want to put that as a rubric. That's another way you could do that. I don't know if that's officially the way rubric should be used, but it does work. But in this case, I'm just going to put it as an italicized note so that it has that additional details there. We're going to save that. I'm going to go back to my planning view, and we're going to put that actually right before the Old Testament reading, after the congregation has sit. We're going to do insert and go down to the bottom, children's message. Put that right there, and you can see what it looks like as a preview there. The last thing we're going to do is to insert a communion statement. And I'll show a different way of doing this. We mentioned possibly using a rubric for children's message. We're going to do that. I don't know if that's the exact way to use rubrics. They're meant to be instructions for how to conduct worship, whereas a communion message is more of a message for the congregation to understand. I think it does work here. It calls it out in red in here so you can see it. And so I think from that aspect it's good. I'm going to put it right before the instructions within the distribution. And so I'm going to go here and click Insert, and a rubric. I'm going to add that right here. And it says click to edit rubric. And from here I can put in a communion statement. Now the suggested statement from Synod is a little bit lengthy. And so if you're going to use that, which it's very good and very detailed, I wouldn't recommend putting it within the service. I'd put it maybe at the beginning by as we gather. But for example purposes, I'm going to put that here. And we'll just put that in place. So now your rubric's there. Now we're going to go back to the bulletin view and take a look at each of these so you can see how it's being used. All right, so here we have as we gather. We'll go through, and what you can do too as you're going through this bulletin view is you can change how this looks. So if you want the hymns to be the melody, you can click melody and it'll put it there. If you want to change the number of stanzas you sing, you can click stanzas. and remove, that one has a blank stanza, we'll remove stanza 2, and we could just put that in there, and it'll adjust it accordingly, give you those notes that it's now just stanzas 1 and 3. You can see here you've got the pointing there. If you're chanting, if you're not, you can just uncheck that, and it just makes it a little bit easier to read without the pointing in place. So as we go down, now right before the Old Testament reading, you have the children's message. And actually, I can zoom in here. Over on the top right, you've got, it says 100%. For your benefit, I'm going to zoom in a little bit so that you can see. We'll go to 155. Now, you may ask, well, why is it that it's not going the full width of the page? This is a preview of the bulletin, and you can adjust that here up in the top, kind of in the center of the screen where it says layout. Right now, we have this for letter folded. If we want to do like legal folded, we could do that too. And yeah, that gives you more space now. You can see the ruler up at the top. We go to layout, and we could save this as the default, and so it always shows up there. So there's our children's message, and there is, we'll go down farther towards the Lord's Supper, and there's our communion statement there. So these are all things that are probably put in every service. And it took a little bit of work to add it. I mean, we're only at 36 minutes so far in our webinar, and we've done a lot of explaining. So you can see this is pretty quick. But things like children's message, communion statements, as we gather, those are things that you use on a really regular basis. And there's probably others that you include too. What I recommend doing is after you set up your service for the first time, now save this liturgy. And what you can do is down on the far right, it says your order of services based on Divine Service Setting 1. Now we can go and do Save As, and we can say Divine Service Setting 1, and then we'll put in here AWG as we gather, CM for Children's Message, and CS for Communion Statement. And that's just shorthand. You could actually type it all out if you wanted to. And then we'll click OK. So now I have saved this custom liturgy. If I go into My Worship Resources again, and we're in Common Elements, if we go down to the bottom to Liturgies, you'll see that's the most recent one, Divine Service Setting 1, as we gather, Children's Message, and then we'll expand it a little bit, and it's CS for Communion Statement. So that actually defines all of our selections for this liturgy. Now, if I go back to the calendar, and let's say I'm planning the following week, Pentecost 19. I click on that, and I say, yep, we're going to plan the service, and it says choose an order of service. I can now go back to Divine Service Setting 1 with my customizations, and you can see all of that is in place here, and we'll click OK. Now, as I go through it again, my hymns are not selected because those are tied in with that day in the church here. My custom liturgy is not saying that I want to sing Christ as our cornerstone every service as hymn of invocation. But I do have As We Gather. In this case, it does have the wrong one because I put it all in there. It's a custom element, and so you may not want to do things that change there, although it is a good placeholder. But here, we'll look down. Children's Message is already in place. Communion Statement, already in place. But I still have to select, there's my yellow triangles for the hymns, but Closing Hymn is already there. I still have to select my closing hymn, but at least that placeholder is in there. And so as you think about your worship services, unless you're doing something completely different every single week, setting up these custom liturgies will make it really easy for you to take the best of the divine service, which already is in the hymnal, and apply those customizations that are appropriate. I mean, you're not going to want to just remove the gospel lesson, although you could using Builder. Highly recommend not doing that. But you can add these really appropriate custom elements that are unique to your congregation, or at the very least are not part of the Lutheran Service Book. All right, so let's go back. we can switch services just by, actually that's edit the service. We can switch services just by going to calendar and clicking on that service, and we're going to continue to edit the bulletin. There's a few other things that'll make your bulletin process really easy. So this has got all the elements in place exactly as you need them. Now let's customize the look. So up here in the top, well, top right of options, but it's really the center of your screen, there's a theme. And we're using what we call the user interface default, UI default right now. There are some other out-of-the-box themes that you can use. One that's very common is the large print, which makes it very easy for those who are hard of sight. Oops, there we go. And it's really big because I have it zoomed in right now. But you can export it here. But we're actually going to go and create a new style sheet. So we're going to do edit style sheet. We're going to create new. And we're going to call this Christ Lutheran Church's style sheet. And what this allows me to do is to pick exactly how each element of worship, each element of worship isn't the right term there, each one of the elements of the bulletin and the styles there. And so I can select them within the view just clicking on them. I can select them in the drop down if I want to go to body and say that. So you know, I'm a big Android fan. Android uses Roboto. That's the name of the font, so I'll select Roboto there. And the position, right now it's indented left. I don't want it indented. So I'm going to go through each one of these and put Roboto in there. And I can even choose the font sizes if I want. Here's the sub caption. I can choose the color of that, so maybe I want to make the sub caption a little bit lighter. You know, italics doesn't make it hidden enough. And then the headings, Merriweather is one of my favorite. It's a serif font. It's not real serify, but I like that. And I'm going to change the color to be a darker blue. There we go. And then the rubrics should still be red, but I don't want them to be like a blood red. I want them to be more of a sangria red. There we go. So I've made all of these changes. Let's see if there's anything else. Subcaption had copyrights. I haven't changed copyrights to be Roboto yet. Whoops, and I hit enter. Enter will click OK, and it'll go ahead and apply my theme. There we go. And you see Christ Lutheran up here. Now, anytime I can go in and edit that style sheet, and there's a few other things if I want to make it bold, modify the position, maybe I want the headers to be centered. That may be one way of doing it. I could change it to all uppercase. That kind of looks nice. I can add a prefix on there if I wanted to add like dashes, or sometimes cross looks good there. And I'll click OK. And let's go all the way up to the top. Yeah, there you can see it. Maybe not the best design choice. That blue and red don't look fantastic together, but it's custom. It's unique to my church. Now, I will point out that when you get into things like the melody, that will not change based on your style. Those are images that are associated with those hymns, and so you can't change those within Lutheran Service Builder. But all these other ones you can, and you can customize it, and every week you can now go back to that same style. And so now I'm just going to go ahead and save this, and I'll save it to my desktop. So all of these styles as a Word document get saved, and let's go ahead and we'll go to my desktop and open that file up. We'll open that in Word. It's on my other screen. Let me drag it in here. Can you see that? Good. And now I can go and modify this. Now it'll just export everything into a Word file, and so you'll have to take a look at it and see as you go through here if you need to make some changes. So like here we have invocation, and I really want it to say invocation. And so I'll come back in here and put the title on there. To put the title, I just go up here to Content and put the title. So now Invocation's in there, and that's something that I really want to come out of the service, and so I may re-export it. But you can also go through and add different things. So let's say you want to have a title page. I'll hit Control-Enter, and that will put everything in there. And let's say I want this to say the, oops, too many spaces. The 18th, I can't type today, Sunday after Pentecost. And the theme has to do with the vineyard, the parable of the vineyard, and so I'll insert an image. Oops, go to Insert, Pictures. Everything's running slow because I'm streaming this. All right, so I have a picture already set aside for this. This also comes from our Creative Worship, and so I can put that in there. If I wanted to put, you know, Christ Lutheran Church or fictional church, I could do all of that. All of these final things are unique to your congregation. They're part of the bulletin, and that bulletin is really different than the service folder. If you will. The bulletin often has news and notes. The service folder is what contains the liturgy. And so the service folder exports here. You can add bulletin elements to it throughout, but it's all ready to go for you. All right, let's take a look. We've got a few minutes left. Oops, let me go back in here. There's also a presentation view. And so when I click on this projector icon here, it'll take me to the presentation view, which now has divided my entire service into different slides. And we have a theme already in place. We call it the LSB Iron theme. It's okay. I don't love it. I want something a little bit more in tune with my congregation. So I've already started this, what we call Epiphany Green. I created this when we were doing Epiphany, but I could always, let's go ahead and edit the slides. We could just rename this to Christ Lutheran Church. Call it green. And see here I can go through and, like I mentioned, I like Roboto. I can change each of these elements to Roboto. Oops, I hit enter. I shouldn't hit enter. All right, so go ahead and select each one. And this way the styles match the bulletin. Now the background image, you'll notice there's this beautiful background image. We call this digital pyramids. This comes with Creative Worship as well. But you could put any background image that you have the rights to use there. But you would select that under the background and go and apply it to that image. And then positions, fonts, all of that is tied to the different elements within here, the style elements. All right, we're going to click OK, and it'll update my document a little slowly. Again, my computer's running slow because I have too much going on. And then I'm going to go to Layout, and I'm going to add in some margins there. I feel a little cramped with it all the way up to the edge. Just 20 pixels. I'm going to switch it to 50, save that as the default, and click OK. Yep, everything's going slowly. Thank you for your patience. All right, so now as I click in here, it'll adjust and make those changes. I have to click on a different slide to move to the next screen. So there you go, and now I can save this to PowerPoint, and I can save it, and I can make edits after that in PowerPoint as well, and there may be some things we want to change. But this theme, the style, is exactly this what I want, and I can use that time and time again. All right, we are just about at 50 minutes. I'm going to get into our question and answers in just a moment. But I do want to highlight a few things, and pardon the advertisements, but I have mentioned Creative Worship several times. Creative Worship and Builder go really well together. Creative Worship gives you custom elements, pre-selected music, the thematic images like I showed in digital paraments. And what's great about it is that we have made Lutheran Service Builder files for everything in Creative Worship. And so these two pair really well together. So I haven't always advertised Creative Worship. I've used the elements time and time again during my presentations, and I get asked, how do you find out more about it? So you can go to music.cph.org/creative-worship, or just music.cph.org, and you can find it there. But before we go too far, I want to talk a little bit about copyright management. So copyright management is not something that I think a lot of church workers think about regularly. It's legal jargon, and that's not fun. We're focused more on the gospel. But it is important to know from a biblical perspective. Before Lutheran Service Builder, there wasn't really a problem with copyrights. You had your hymnal, and you bought enough hymnals for your congregation, and you bought the right to share hymnals and use them during worship. Well, as we introduced Lutheran Service Builder, we introduced both a problem and a solution. The problem is that we were now introducing a way for churches to literally copy copyrighted information and share it. You can print it out on your printer. And so the solution is that within Lutheran Service Builder, with our hymn license, which is an additional fee, it allows churches to print copyrighted material, but provide automatic reporting back to the copyright holders. And so not only does this allow you to see the statistics, allow us to see the statistics and share the appropriate revenue with the copyright holders, but it gives you those stats so that you can see which hymns are being used regularly. Now, you may ask, why is this important? Why are we so concerned about copyright holders? Well, first, it's a seventh commandment issue. As copyright holders and composers produce music, it's their intellectual property, and to use it in an inappropriate way is to steal it. But by providing the compensation to copyright holders, we're also allowing them to continue this work for the church and continually produce new music and new elements of worship for use in the congregation. So it works really well together. Lutheran Service Builder makes it so easy that you just go about doing your services as you normally would, and we'll take care of the copyrights. And so as you saw in Service Builder, let me go back to that, as we were looking at like the bulletin view, you had that big copyright thing in the background. That just tells you that there's some copyrighted material here. Like this first one, Christ is our cornerstone, is public domain. But let's go down a little bit farther and find one. Here we go. So like this one, Fruitful Trees, the Spirit Sowing, that is copyrighted by Hope Publishing. And so by using our hymn license, it will inform us that you've used this hymn, and we'll in turn take a percentage of what you paid for your hymn license and share that with Hope. And so it just works really well together so that you don't have to think about that. Now, the theme of this presentation is streamlining the bulletin creation process. Many, many churches are faithful in providing the royalties to these copyright holders by hand. They will manually report to these publishing houses, and that's good and proper and appropriate, and it takes time. And so that's why I bring this up today, is that by allowing Lutheran Service Builder to do it, you don't have to think about it, and more importantly, you don't have to spend the time reporting it. We'll take care of that for you. So that falls right in line with this whole theme. All right, so that concludes the presentation. If you are not already a Lutheran Service Builder user, you can download a free trial at lutheranservicebuilder.com. But I do want to invite you to a special live preview of where we're headed with Lutheran Service Builder. Next week It'll be Tuesday, October 10th. So that's actually 1 week from today at almost this exact time, a little bit later, 11:30 a.m. Central Time. And we'll be doing this live on Facebook on the CPH Music page. So facebook.com/CPHmusic. It will be myself and Reverend Bob Lale, who I mentioned at the beginning, the creator of Lutheran Service Builder. We're going to be talking together and sharing some exciting updates. So please come in and join it, completely free. It won't be too long. Probably only be on about 15-20 minutes or so. But we'll be taking some questions too if you have any then. There's my contact information, and while I leave that on the screen, I'm going to review the questions that we have today so that I can answer them. But if you have any questions after the fact, this is how you can reach out to us. You can either contact me at my email address or phone number. If you're interested in learning more about Lutheran Service Builder, you can contact a software consultant. That's our sales team there. Their information is listed below. So let me take a look and see what questions I have. Let's see, Lenita just got here and was asking how to download Let Us Pray and how to put that into LSB. I know you got here a little bit late. I'll do a quick recap of that so that you can see it. You can also watch the recording. But what you would do is you would go to LutheranServiceBuilder.com, and that'll take you to our home page. And down below in the footer, you'll go to Downloads. You'll click on that link, and the Let Us Pray files are provided from Synod, and we've got them listed by date and day of the church year, and then you can select your lectionary, 1 year or 3 year. And you just select that file, and it'll download a zip file. A zip file, a collection of other files. In this case, it's just one other file. When you open that zip file, you don't even have to extract it. You can just double-click on the LSB file. And when you double click on that, now it loads it into Builder. And actually, because I've already done it, it can say replace or skip. We'll go ahead and replace it. And that now just gets added to my worship resources. And you can see that under common elements. There's October 8th, 2017. And then you just insert it in the appropriate place within your worship folder, service folder. And so on the planning view, we'll go down to Prayers of the Church. Actually, I think it's go up to Prayers of the Church. There we go. And it'll be under my Write My Own section for the custom elements, so my worship resources. And you can select it by drag and drop it. Drag in and drop it, and it'll put all of this that you see here on the right in there. So that is how you do it. Quick review, I went through it at the beginning too, which goes into your next question, Lenita. It says, since it's being recorded, where would I go to see the complete presentation? You don't have to go far. I'll be emailing you a link to that later on today. So it'll be available in our resource center, which the link will direct you to. You can also get that by going to resources.concordiatechnology.org. And when you go there, this is our entire collection of resources for technology in your ministry. There's a software menu here, and you can go down to Lutheran Service Builder. And it'll show you all of our recorded webinars. And so that's a great way to learn more, get some more detailed information as you go. There's some very lengthy ones in there. There's a series of 4 hour-long videos that goes into training for all of Lutheran Service Builder. So I highly recommend you taking a look there. Let's see, we've got another question. Can you change the order of the various elements of the divine service? Yes, very easily. It's so easy I just skipped right over it. The way you do that is, let's say here you wanted to move the hymn of the day to before the gospel reading. All you do is click and drag, and it'll give you a little placeholder for where to put it, and it's done. And you can save this as custom liturgy. It'll remember those changes, but it's that simple. You can just drag and drop and place it there. So thank you for that question. That's so easy. I skipped over it before. Let's see. We've got another question. I've had problems creating common elements like inserting alternate readings or hymns that are not in LSB. Do you have to name them twice? I always end up with 3 or 4 items that are called new common element. Thanks for bringing that up. That is a tricky thing, and I have problems with that as well. when you go and create a new common element, you click New, you have the opportunity right then to type the name. And it says New Common Element. And so you can type that as, test element. And then the caption comes into place. And it's really easy to change the caption. The caption can say, common element, or whatever you put your name in. And that doesn't change the name under My Worship Resources. That's what you're saying there. The way to do that is also really simple. You just double click on it on the left-hand column. And now that I do that, it's not working. Let's see here. I did it just a second ago. I see your problems. And those are the kind of things that we're looking at as we're fixing as we move to the online version. There we go. So select it, then double click. See, now I can do test element. It's a little finicky. I absolutely see why you're having trouble. I've had those same troubles before. So now we can change it and call alternate reading and click enter. That doesn't change your caption, but yeah, that is really tricky. Yeah, as I click, for whatever reason, I'll talk to our programmers about that too. It'll definitely be fixed in the new version. The way you go about changing the names, since it'll be written using web technology, is a little bit simpler. But yeah, that's weird that I can't double click on it now. So when I go back to the planning view and go to My Worship Resources, now when I double click it, it works. So that's a weird workaround, but it will work. So if you double click and it doesn't open, click back on the planning view, go back to My Worship Service, kind of resets that page. Then you can edit it. But yeah, that's goofy. Thanks for bringing that up. I'm glad I've at least got a workaround solution for you, but yeah, that's kind of goofy. And then your next question there, are those new elements searchable? WR was asking that. Yes, they are, as you go in here. So as depending on what you've selected, it will filter down your view. But if you go and do insert and go to insert a new element, it'll show you all of those things. So if we type in children, give it a second, it'll show everything. Then you can go into elements, and it still shows you all of the different ones, but you do have your common elements at the top. So it's just a matter of putting in the right query. So actually, let's put in something else. We've got ages in there. If I type in ages and I highlight over it, it'll show where within those common elements it's used, so like all children ages 2 to 12. So you can search in both ways. You'll get a lot of results. I recommend switching it down to show elements, and then that will show your custom elements and things that you can add. So good. I'm glad that worked for you. That is the end of our questions and also the end of our time. So I'm going to wrap up here. Once again, I'll go back into our my contact information. If you need to reach out to me at any time, please feel free. But with that, I'll close up by saying thank you again for attending and have a great rest of the day. Bye.